Welcome, you slimy reptiles. My name is DasTactic, and this is how to play as the Reptilian Haakonish in Distant Worlds 2. So, hope you don't mind me calling you slimy reptiles, but anyway, that's what you get. If you're watching this video, you're watching this because you want to play as the slimy reptiles. So these are an intelligent and quite aggressive. Haakonish are highly pretentious. They also have a strong sense of their own racial superiority. Thus, they do not enjoy the company of other races and have a tendency to be xenophobic. So this is the faction we're going to be having a look at today in this particular tutorial. So again, I hope you've been enjoying the series. Again, a special thank you to my Patreon supporters, and if you've been sort of getting any of the merchandise through the links down below in the description. And also, if you I've got the game available on the Nexus Game Store as well. If you do want to get it through that way, it also does support the channel and me. I am the channel after all. Anyway, it's just it's a softer way of saying supporting me. Anyway, let's get into it. I don't know what mood I'm in today. I think calling you a slimy reptiles has sort of put me into a bit of a cheeky mood, so we'll get into it. Now, these are an interesting faction to play. They're not easy, okay? So if you're a new player, I would suggest that you don't play these. I would suggest if you are a new player, play the humans. The humans are probably the vanilla starting point for people in the game. It just gives you a bit of a baseline. The humans aren't the easiest to play either, to be honest. My favourite faction is the Akdarians, but the Haakonish are an interesting faction to play. They're very unique. So let's have a look and see what they've got with their personality. They do actually have fairly high aggression, a little bit higher than the humans. So they're just slightly higher than the humans, and which means that they're more likely to take offence at things. They're more likely to respond poorly. Not as bad as the Bascara, of course, at their plus 40, but they're up there. They're up there, and so they're going to take offence easily. Their caution is they're slightly cautious. They're sort of in the neutral range, but they are a little bit cautious. They're not going to sort of leap to into a problem. Again, if we compare that to the Boscara, they're negative 20. They're considered reckless. Look at the Teekans. They're negative 10. They're neutral, but really they are reckless as well. They're Haakonish. It's funny, the Haakonish and the Teekans share a lot of similarities in what they actually end up doing, but with a very different sort of personality trait. The Haakonish, if you think of the Trade Guild from Star Wars, that's sort of what you're thinking of. Even the Trade Guild from the Dune series, it's the same sort of corrupt but overpowering mercantile guilds in space is sort of what they really actually are. So the dependability is they actually are unreliable. Not as unreliable again as the Boscara, but pretty much as unreliable as anybody else. They're not a good faction to have as a neighbour because of this unreliability. You cannot maintain a it's funny because in one sense you want to maintain a relationship with them because of the trade benefits that they actually have, but they just don't stick to them. They're backstabbing all the time, so they're very unreliable in that case. Their reproduction rate is slightly below the average for the galaxy. Plus 6% is the average. Their migration tendency, they are xenophobic. They don't migrate away from their homeworlds or from their worlds, so they don't like that one. And their assimilation, they're hard to assimilate because they're very stubborn. So they're a stubborn race. That's sort of what their personality actually is. They like marshy swamps, they like mangrove forests, they will actually live in oceans, and they will actually live in forest as well. They hate rocky desert, they hate ice, and they hate sandy desert. So they're frogs. They're just big, green, slimy frogs on two legs. Their bonuses. Now, these also then do get a lot of different research bonuses. Engine research is plus 10%. Counter-espionage, they have a bonus with that as well. So they can actually, they're very good at stopping spies. Hyperdrive research is plus 10%. Hyper jump speed is plus 10%. So they're very good in space as well, so be aware of that. If you are playing them, you get some big advantages if you do play as them. Ship energy savings plus 5%. Diplomacy, they're not very diplomatic, even though they are more trade-oriented than other factions. And their war weariness is also, they can stay in fights for fairly long as well. They're starting research. If you start with these guys as the in the pre-war, you end up with early area weapons, ground combat, tractor beams, and early pulse weapons. To be honest, area weapons and tractor beams are pretty useless. So So that is not a great start, but it's what they have. So that's what they end up getting. Now they've got a few unique techs. They've got the deal breaker beam. That's just a good quality beam. I mean, we've seen other beams with other factions as well. We've got the mega density fuel cell. This is awesome. This actually allows them to go further and further than anyone else really in the galaxy with this particular fuel cell. This is actually, even though it sounds really boring, it's actually really, really cool because it extends the range of their ships quite dramatically. And so it's a great one. If you can get hold of it and you're not playing as a Haakonish, it's a one that's well worthwhile trying to get hold of. The Starfield generator, actually, what is that one? I forget what that one actually does do. Anyway, we'll have a look at that when we get into the actual game itself. And so the race victory conditions are very, very simple for these guys. Just earn the most trade income in the galaxy. They're a mercantile guild, is really what they are. And control one of the special high-value resources, either Loris fruit, Caribbean spice, or Zentavia fluid. Now, these are very, very rare in the galaxy. They will be scattered around the galaxy, maybe one or two locations in the whole galaxy of each of these resources, and so they just have to control one of those. So it's still all about trade. Even though they're not good at diplomacy, the trade is important. But so they're not going to be wanting to get into defence pacts or anything like that. They just want trade agreements. So the preferred governments are feudalism and the Mercantile Guild. Now the Mercantile Guild is only available to these and the Teekans. We have a quick look at and see what the Teekans have got. So they've got Mercantile Guild and Monarchy for the Teekans. So they're the two different types that we end up having for those. And these, we have the Feudalism and Mercantile Guild for the Haakonish. Again, they have the standard sort of grouping up to the top there. Again, I would probably argue that really they shouldn't have democracy or republic. That should be probably gone from their mix. Their troops are slightly above average at 125 and 188, so they're actually not too bad if we compare them to our vanilla humans. The humans are 120 and 180. Haakonish are just slightly better in attack and defence than the humans actually are. The most disliked races, actually, this is interesting. I thought it was Boscara that didn't like themselves. It's actually the Haakonish don't like themselves. So they like themselves, but at negative 10%. So if you don't see the actual race mentioned in here, it means it's 0% and it's taken that they actually like each other equally to themselves. But the Haakonish, if they come across other Haakonish, there is a slight dislike, but it's still high, but it's still a slight dislike. They do like the Securans and the Ugnari as well, so they're the actual other groups that they do tend to like. And again, they don't hate the other factions, the Boscara, the Daut, and the Mortallans. These are the most aggressive of the other races, so they don't like them, but they will actually work with them. And so they're sort of often other factions don't tend to hate the Haakonish either, is the way that they sort of do play. All right, let's go into the actual game and have a look at the government types. Okay, so here we are around our marshy swamp moon. Let's go into the Empire. We'll go into government and have a look at the comparison between... in fact, this one did start off as feudalism. We'll start this one off at and compare this one to Mercantile Guild. The Mercantile Guild is really, really interesting, I've got to say. It's actually, if you are going to play this, I would suggest that you play it as a Mercantile Guild and not as feudalism, just for the sake of it being an interesting one to play. But don't make this the first faction that you play as. It is actually a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more difficult than some of the other factions. So population growth, feudalism has higher population growth than the Mercantile Guild. War weariness, the feudalism is much more likely to be able to stay in wars than the Mercantile Guild. Diplomacy, they've got a further negative 10%. So we already had the native 10% for the actual faction itself, and then it takes it down to negative 20% if you're feudalism. But if you have the Mercantile Guild, you have a net result of plus 10. All research is negative 5 for feudalism. It's plus 5 for the mercantiles. Weapons research is lower than if you've got the Mercantile Guild, as is troop research, but you do get boosts along with that one through there. Colony happiness is worse for feudalism. It's okay with mercantiles. Troop recruitment rate is high with feudalism. Recovery and also the maintenance savings is great for feudalism. Back in through here, they're both actually bad with colony corruption, so they're both a corrupt style of government. The mining rate is bad for feudalism, but good for the Mercantile Guild. And this is actually, there'll be a little added bonus if you play as the Mercantile Guild in terms of your mining. So I'll talk about that in just a second. It should be at the end of this list. Tourism income is poor for the feudalism, but it's fine for Mercantile Guild. The ship maintenance savings, this is actually pretty massive. The feudalism really doesn't have to pay much to have a lot of ships, so you can actually design a lot of ships and have a lot of ships in space, whereas the Mercantile Guild can still have a bit more than average, but just a small amount. Counter-espionage, the Mercantile Guild is more open, so they're more dealing with other things, so they're more open to spies coming in there. In that sense, they're more vulnerable to spy networks coming in against them. Construction research is plus 25%, so they're very much into building ships and building their freighters, their mining ships, and so on and so forth. Facility maintenance savings back into here at plus 10, which is great. The trade income plus 30, which is really what they're all about as a Mercantile Guild, and the colony income at plus 10. As I say, if you're going to play them, play them with the Mercantile Guild, because it is more, as I say, more nuanced, very, very nuanced actually, if you do play it that way. And so the big special ability for this guy, these can manually control mining ships. Now, to try to put that into perspective, in the game is split between state-run ships and privately run ships. The privately run ships you've got no control over. The mining ships are privately run. But if you play as a Mercantile Guild, you can manually tell them where to go and mine. And when you're struggling for resources, and if you particularly need things in the early part of the game, that can be an absolute godsend to actually go and send them somewhere. And even if you just know, look, I just need 100 pieces of steel in the actual hold, and it's going to be mining away and getting 1,000, which is going to take forever, you can get it to 100 and then send it back home again. So you can actually tell it what to do. And that's actually huge in the game. It's actually, it allows you to do things, particularly when when you're struggling with resources. It does allow you to override what the AI is doing, and it's a really nice addition in the game. Again, very, very nuanced to the way it actually does play. You don't do it all the time, but when you do need it, it is really, really cool. Okay, so the typical leader term for feudalism, it's 20 years, and then there's a coup d'etat, and it's highly disrupted at negative 20. This is massively disruptive. So expect, if you're playing as a feudalism society, you're going to end up in troubles at different times where you may have to go back and take over rebellious planets. And it just appoints a new character from anywhere. This one here, every 40 years, the merchants actually get together and hold an election. And there's a mild boost, it boosts the happiness levels of the whole of society when a new leader does take over. So it's a bit more like an election. And that can come from anywhere in society. Can be scientists, can be can be admirals, generals, spies, wherever else they might actually come from. Now the startup situation. Let's see what these guys have got. So the feudalism start with starfighters, they start with zero-G combat, and they start with shipboarding. So these are much more almost aligned to being like pirates in a way, where they can actually sort of go and do shipboarding fairly effectively, which is not that valuable, to be honest. So that's really not that great. This one over through here, though, research completed expanded civilian ships, which gives you bigger mining ships, bigger mining... what else do you get? You get the mining ships, you get the better transport, so you can actually transport more. And also research completed an expanded space station, so you can go with the larger spaceports as well right from the start. So that's your infrastructure playing as the Mercantile Guild. And so very, very cool the way that one actually does work with the Mercantile Guild. Now, we're not playing as that. We're not playing this at all, actually. We're just we're just bouncing in to sort of have a look and see what they can do. And so again, it's the Mercantile Guild would be the one that I would suggest is a fun one to play, just because it's a bit different. But feudalism, they're all very, very different. They're different sorts styles of government. So that sort of crossover between the style of government and the actual faction itself are really quite interesting. So you do end up with sort of like a very different sort of collection of aspects about it. Why is that 21? Oh, there we go. There's a leader that's come in with -1. That's what it is. I was thinking that's an unusual number to see in that particular list. All right, so that's theirs. We'll just go into the technology and have a bit of a look at this one through here. Yeah, so in the weapons, their special tech is this extended, the deal breaker beam essentially, back in through here, and then it extends on even further up through that side. Not the best weapon, to be honest. Like it's okay, but it's not something that you'd. I mean, if you've got it, you've got it. What's the size of that one? That's a size 57. It's a big weapon. Again, you're only going to be able to use this on big ships. So it's for the start of the game. It's not really going to be useful. At size 57, you need a large mount, and then you have to have a capacity on the ship to be able to to be able to house a weapon like this. So it's not something that I tend to use much, particularly in the early part of the game. The other things that they actually have are playing as the Haakonish. As we sort of scroll back through here, it's around here somewhere. Where is it? As I say, this one is quite cool. The way it sort of does work. Actually, it's just underneath here. They end up with. Yep, the warped light field back and through the side. This isn't the one I was talking about, but this one here is the. So this one gives them the warp to light field, which gives them countermeasures. So it's got higher countermeasures of plus 15%, and countermeasures actually is very good in the ships. By the way, this one has got a size of 10 though, so it's. Actually, all the countermeasures are size 10, but to be honest. So anyway, that sort of competes with things like the improved countermeasures back up through here, for example, where this has got countermeasures of 15. This one has got countermeasures of 15 as well, but with a bit of ion defense and also stealth. So sort of make the ships a bit more stealthy. So it's not great, that particular one. So it is there, but you can then sort of zip straight from there. Instead of having to go through this particular tree, you can go straight from there across into this one over here and sort of get this next version of it. The other thing that they actually have, which I thought it was further up, actually, no, it's down in here. The compressed fuel. This is actually massive for the Haakonish to be able to get this one through here. And so this one gives them a fuel capacity of 150, whereas the stock standard fuel at this same range is 110. So there's an extra 40 fuel on board, which just means that they can go that much further. And then eventually they can go straight from, again, they don't have to go through this other progression. They can just go straight across. So instead of having to go from there to there to there, they can just go straight from that one to this one, and then they pick it up where they get 175 fuel capacity, which is great. And if you compare that to the large, this is 150. It just gives them an advantage to be able to maneuver in space, and it's important. In this game, fuel capacity is very important. So anyway, that's what they've got as the Haakonish. Let's have a quick look at their ships. Now, the actual ships themselves, there's nothing really to write home about in terms of what they then go and do with the actual ships themselves. We can have a bit of a look to see what they've got. Basic military, just one large mount there. So comparing that to, say, the Boscarans, it's nowhere near as strong. 2 defences. The frigates. 2 large, one. We'll have a look at this. We'll actually go and design these. Let's have a quick look. The thing of interest is, when does the hangars kick in? This one's actually got 3 defence, which is actually pretty good for a frigate. So that's actually not too bad. This one here's got 4 defence. Still no bays at this point in time. The multi-role starships, we're now getting 1 hangar bay. So again, you probably wouldn't worry about them there. The dedicated carriers have got 3, so it's even worse than the Boscaran ships. So again, carriers are not really what these guys would be all about. The improved cruisers, though, actually, sorry, if we go straight to multi-role, we've got this one here with 4 and 4, and then it sort of goes up from there, really, where we've got the different sorts of command cruisers, 5 and 3, 5 and 4. The capital ships down the side with the 10 and 2, 10 and 3. And then the mega capital ships at 10 and 4. Nowhere near as powerful as the Boscaran ships in comparison, but still actually up there. So it's an interesting faction to play. They're not super strong with what they do. Let's have a look and see what their ships look like. Let's go into ship design, add new. Start with the escort, because if you're playing pre-warp, this is the only one you're going to have access to, and it's going to be weak for you. It's not going to be all that good. So if we just go and manually create this one here, we've got one weapon on the top of the ship, and it doesn't even look all the way around. It is a large slot, so if you could put a deal breaker on that one, it would be okay. But the weight of the deal breaker on this little ship would actually break it. It just wouldn't work. So in essence, you're going to have to look for some other sort of weapon than your actual weapon to be able to put onto an escort, even though it's a large mount. It does allow options, but again, you've got no point defense protection at all. Very poor design in terms of an actual ship. You wouldn't be wanting to have these really doing much in your empire. These are as soon as you get something better, you'd be throwing these away. A bit like the human ships, I guess, to a degree. The humans are better, though, than this, a lot better. This is actually a really, really poor design in terms of what it does do. By the way, if you disagree with things I say like this, please put a comment down. I do like to see other points of view. And I don't play this faction all that much, but if you're someone who plays this faction and says, oh no, you can do this, this and this, then please write a comment. It's very helpful for me, and it's also helpful for everyone else as well, to sort of get some perspective as to how other people actually approach the game. So let's go and get rid of that escort. Let's just go add new, and we'll go to the patrol escort. This one has only got the one large again as well, so if we just go and manually create it, again, same sort of deal. It's just going to be faster, but still useless, largely useless. We'll cancel that one. I mean, the one saving factor with this is that you can use their special. They can actually have that the better countermeasures. So the countermeasures can be applied fairly effectively, and that may be where their heavy escort actually probably is going to be the pick of all the escorts. Let's have a look and see what that one does bring. That one brings 1 on 1. This is actually looking more hopeful. The other thing about the heavy escorts, I haven't mentioned this before, but they start off with good countermeasures, which makes it difficult for ships to hit them. And so these are better. For example, the patrol escort's only got a +10, and the standard escort has got a +10 as well. So the heavy escort already comes in with 10% better protection against other attacks coming back into it. Let's have a look and see what we can do with this one. And so we do actually have a good old 270 at the back there. So we still can't do protection. This is very much like the human sort of like the same weaknesses as the human ships. And so you've then got another. You've got a large in the front there and a medium at the back. But in reality, you probably want to have this as a point defense weapon, and then some sort of other weapon up the top here. And again, you don't have a massive amount of space for this one, so it would be one of these sort of ships where you'd be picking and choosing, trying to figure out how you'd deck this one out. It would be more likely that you'd use this one to try to figure out what to do around the other ships when you start to get the frigates and destroyers to come in, as to how you would then sort of use this ship. Not all that useful, but at least this one does have that second mount, and so that's actually not too bad. Okay, let's go to the frigates. So we'll just go straight down to frigate and manually design this one. These are weird as well. Actually, when you're fighting these, they really are weak. And I can say that from the point of view of a Boscaran. Boscarans love fighting Haakonish. And this is sort of like where their ships are just not great. And so you can see through there, you've got one small little 360 at the top there for your point defense. And then you've got these little broadside things on either side where it can sort of fire. The Boscarans tend to then put, these are actually large areas as well, but again, you probably wouldn't use them. I think that they tend to use these with missiles, from what I can remember in the game. It tends to be their go-to, so they tend to have these as missiles. If you were using these, you'd probably put missiles on these or torpedoes on these, and then actually use the heavy escort for some sort of beam or some sort of railgun or something like that, just to mix it up a little bit. So that's the frigate. Really nothing to write home about. So we're looking at a faction that's fairly difficult to play with these ship designs. They're not great ship designs. Add new, go to the destroyer, and manually look at this one as well. Okay, so again, we're looking at potential weaknesses. We do actually have another 360 on top there for point defense. We've got another 360 there, so that's actually good. Having the 2 point defenses is actually a good thing. That does give it pretty good protection against small craft and also against other missiles. So if you're coming up against a force that is using missiles or small craft against you, this is actually a pretty good ship to start off with. We then actually have like a range of large mounts, like one at the front there at 180, and then 2 broadsides. So probably again, either torpedoes or missiles would be very, very good on this particular craft, along with 2 point defense would be probably the way I'd be looking at trying to build this particular ship. And probably this destroyer would then form the backbone of a lot of your fleets. And so you'd probably then have the other ships you wouldn't be using as much as this particular ship. So you'd probably be wanting to have a lot of these and hardly any of the frigates or the little escorts. The escorts may be, there's the heavy escorts along with the destroyers, may be a useful combination. for the simple fact that the heavy escorts are probably going to be able to move a bit faster than this ship, I would think, over in the actual game, and they may be able to then sort of help out in that sort of capacity, even just to soak up damage while the destroyers sort of work away. Then as you go further into the game, you're then going to be getting your light cruisers. Let's have a look and see how these have actually been done. And so these again are getting like a 270 at the top there. We do actually have a 270 at the back, and that does fire off onto the sides. That's not bad because both of these protect it from the rear. For point defense, these are actually better than the one at the top. But the one at the top could be useful if you're the one doing the attacking. Again, a lot of broadsides with this. So again, a lot of missiles and a lot of torpedoes. If you use beams or rail guns, it means that only one half of the ship can fire. If you're using torpedoes and missiles, it means both can fire at the same time. So you double your attack by doing that. So not a great design as well either there, to be honest. And then we sort of then just go up from that particular point. These are not a strong space fighting faction, but they are an interesting faction to play. So they're a bit. I'd rate these as one of the harder factions to actually sort of be able to actually play. But again, a different way of actually looking at the game. So that's the Haakonish. Again, I hope you've been enjoying this series. Please consider liking and subscribing if you do actually enjoy the content. And of course, the game is available in my link below at my Nexus store, so you can actually get Distant Worlds 2 from there. And I will catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.